seen that with both of my parents, where they've gone out of their way to hurt me, knowingly hurt me, see me cry, be upset about
Oh
it,
God, I'm so sorry.
and kind of justify it. Well, that's the truth. Or, they'll say that, well, maybe you shouldn't have done this, and then I wouldn't have done that. They would blame me for their
Oh
negative
God.
behavior.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing good and taking good care of themselves. So today I've got a wonderful guest with me from all the way from Chicago, and she's an expert. She talks, beautifully, on this subject, covert narcissism. So I thought, it'll be an amazing experience, for you guys and for me to interact with her and know her viewpoint. So without any delay, let me welcome Dr. Z. Dr. Z, thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Z, I would request you to briefly introduce yourself. I did my bit, but I would want you to introduce yourself so that, my small little YouTube family, can connect with you better.
Yeah, so I'm commonly known as Dr. Z. My real name is Dr. Christine Zachariah. I'm a former endocrinologist, now turned covert narcissistic abuse recovery coach. Through two covert narcissistic friendships and actually a covert narcissistic father, I've
Oh,
really turned it into my mission to educate people on covert narcissism, as well as help them recover and heal and move past the trauma.
wonderful. And thank you once again, Dr. Z, for joining in today.
Thank you.
So without any delay, let me dive into, our discussion. So Dr. Z, in my therapy rooms, I often witness, how these covert narcissistic abuse leaves survivors literally, doubting their own sense of reality. They are literally destabilized. They don't know what is real. And they literally doubt themselves. They doubt the experience that they endured. So Dr. Z, I would like to know, how would you clinically distinguish covert narcissistic abuse from more overt forms? And what, subtle signs, should we be listening for?
Yeah, it's really honestly, they present similarly in the sense their core characteristics are the same, but just outwardly, the appearance is very different. So, covert narcissists appear to be humble, they appear to be kind, but underneath, there's still the same manipulative behavior, the same jealousy, the same resentment that's present with overt narcissism. And they also crave the same attention, and they are attention seeking in general, but they do it more covertly through weaponized gift giving, through acts of kindness. And really, their behavior is more targeted in the sense that once they do view someone as a threat, they will target all their malignancy towards them while they're still nice to everybody else around them. And so that's why it's so hard to detect because most people would never know a person's a covert narcissist unless they're the direct target of that person.
Mm-hmm. True. So, Dr. Z, I have seen, I have observed in my practice that many survivors carry, a kind of an internalized, critic born, of parental gaslighting. So, I would want to know, how can we help clients, or, survivors or victims, identify and externalize that internal critic, so they no longer, blame themselves for their parents' dysfunction.
Yeah, and that's a hard one and it's a long journey because when you're growing up and you're looking at your parents, you think that your parents have the best interest at heart, that you generally think that they love you. But what you realize once you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, covert or overt, is that it's conditional love. And understanding that I think is key to moving on because, at least for me, I'll tell you, my father, he was very loving in the sense that he provided for me. He moved me across the country multiple times. I always got clothes, what I needed from the physical sense, but emotionally very absent. And with narcissistic parenting, that's so hard to distinguish. Okay, well, if he was a narcissist, why did he do all of these good things for me? And that dichotomy is something that often is hard to navigate. And for someone who's struggling with that, you have to look at the big picture and you have to think, okay, like, were there conditions that needed to be met in order for my parent to love me? And I think that's such a key distinguishing part from genuine love versus conditional love.
Mm-hmm. So true. I personally feel, Dr. Z, that, covert abuse, feels invisible to both survivors and therapists. I mean, there is no visible scar. So, I mean, how do we, pin things? I mean, how do we identify or, hold people responsible for it? I would want to know from your experience, if you're comfortable in sharing
Mhm.
your personal life or whatever experience you had with covert narcissists. I mean, uh, based on the different landscapes, both emotional and neurological, um, what are the clues, that, one can, observe? I mean, that they ignore at times. And, if you could tell me, I mean, you being a survivor of, covert narcissistic abuse, what is the lasting impact of, covert victimization?
Yeah, the gaslighting is a big part of it. They constantly invalidate your reality, your perception of events, and the guilt tripping that goes around that as well is something that
Mm-hmm.
often accompanies part of this rumination cycle. So for me, the gaslighting was a big thing. I was
Mm-hmm.
confident. I saw certain things happen, unfold, not just with my father, but also with my two covert narcissistic friendships. But when I talked to them about it, when I approached them about it, they completely denied it. And they completely denied it with such fervor and such truth in their voice. It generally made me question my own reality of events and my own perception of things. And that's not normal in any relationship. And I think that's a key point for any survivor to recognize that your reality is valid. What you're sensing is valid. It's just that they're so good at lying, they try to convince you otherwise. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say the gaslighting was a big part of it. And as well as just them not being genuinely happy when you're happy. They're constantly berating you when good things happen to you. They're constantly trying to one up you in some way. And that competition, where it can be present in certain relationships, is an unhealthy competition, like saying that they're only worthy of it and you're not worthy of it at all. And that
Mm-hmm.
deep wound of unworthiness is something that's prevalent in covert narcissistic relationships.
Mm-hmm. Um, Dr. Z, and I mean, my YouTube subscribers, I mean, I wanted to share, my bit. My mother was a covert narcissist, and my father was, a grandiose narcissist.
Mm.
But as how my father aged, I, saw him literally shape shifting and transforming into a covert narcissist. Now, that is something, we don't often see in the cases, but I mean, I personally feel that does exist. They do shapeshift when they are, of course, in their prime. They have, a huge amount of that grandioseness. I am everything, I can do anything, I can get away, rules don't apply to me. But as how they age, and as how their, flying monkeys, leave, or, they just, move on with their life, and, their enablers, circle tends to get narrowed. As how you age, you don't have that big circle, the way how you have, I mean, in this age, the way, the age we are in. So I felt that, that, such a thing exists, that, a grandiose can also act as a covert narcissist, when they turn old. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Z?
Yeah, it's interesting because it sounds like maybe there's more of a victim role that's being played given the aging part of it. And so that grandiosity that was there no longer is serving them when they're older and vulnerable and they truly are reliant on their children or other people for help. So it doesn't surprise me actually that that sort of conversion happened because it's like a survival instinct for them. They know if they continue
Mm-hmm.
their grandiose behavior into their elderly age when they're really feeble, they can't fully depend in a way that a vulnerable appearing person could.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of
Also,
flows on
mm-hmm.
the strings of empathy, essentially.
Mm-hmm. True. So now, moving on to this interesting aspect of, narcissistic family, where a child is put through parentification, the child is parentified into an adult role. I personally feel, if you are raised by a grandiose narcissist, the parentification happens at a different level. And when you are raised by a covert narcissist, parentification happens at a whole different level. Because I have experienced, parentification, from both the ends, from my mother end also how it was, and from dad's end also how it was. It was more external. He wanted me like a showpiece, like a
Mm,
trophy, that you need to do this. I have a name and image to maintain. And from my mother's side, it was more like, you need to rescue me out of this shit. I mean, you have to save me. I have no one else apart from you. And I literally bought that for some time. I was like, okay, I'm going to be the savior. I will be, the one who will be rescuing her. But later on with time, I realized that this was her way of love bombing,
mm.
to get me into that search and rescue mission, that, you drag me out of the problem and then you feel good, you feel purposeful. So, Dr. Z, parentification in general is a concept that is often misunderstood outside of clinical space. I mean, people don't get it. I mean, they are like, what is this? I mean, no such thing happens. It's the child's responsibility. You need to play your part in the family. Now, Dr. Z, I would want to know how would you explain parentification to a layman?
Mm.
When someone is raised by narcissistic parents, and how does parentification, according to you, affect, the victim's adult identity and their relationships?
Yeah, it's an unfair and unfortunate role that narcissists do place on their kids, and the older they get, the more you witness it. I'll tell you with my parents, one is an
Mm-hmm.
overt narcissist, my mother. My father is the
Mm-hmm.
covert narcissist. And
Mm-hmm.
at the age of 11, believe it or not, my mom put it upon me to cook for my brother and my father when she had to go to India to take care of her sick dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not a
Oh.
responsibility that should have been put on an 11-year-old. But I was like, okay, sure, I'll cook, I'll provide
Mm-hmm.
food for the
Mm-hmm.
family. But looking back at this now at the age of 42, I'm like, that's ridiculous. I shouldn't have had to been placed in a role
Mm-hmm.
where, I was made to feel guilty. Well, if I don't cook, then my dad and brother are going to eat McDonald's instead of healthy Indian food for dinner. So,
Mm-hmm.
that was a role I was thrown into by my overt, narcissistic mother. I'll tell you, my father, it really wasn't an issue until recently now where he's ill. He's got his own medical ailments where he basically he
Mm-hmm.
plays victim to the relationship with my mother because he said, I stayed in this relationship for your children, which I think is an unfair thing to say to your kids. But also, there's this guilt of, you're not allowed to move on with your life because I'm sick now. You have to stay and take
Mm-hmm.
care of me. And that's something that I've been struggling with. And, through my own healing journey, I've worked through those wounds and I'm working through it. But that parentification, especially culturally, I'll tell you, with South Asian
Mm-hmm.
parents, it's such a big
Mm-hmm.
thing and it's an unfortunate thing. But what's important for survivors to realize, and this breaks the cultural norms and even societal norms to a certain degree, is that even though they're your parents, you are not obligated to take care of them. You're not obligated to do anything for them just because they're blood related. And, at the end of the day, what's most important is taking care of yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. And that's such an earth shattering thing for a child to say, especially a child of immigrant parents. So, coming from the
Mm-hmm.
United States, I should say, but like,
Mm-hmm.
South Asian parents.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are those are my 2 cents on parentification.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Z, I have worked with a lot of survivors, and I have seen them. They have been parentified to such an extent that they literally betray their own authentic self. They betray
Mm,
their own family that they have chosen and made out of their free will, their children, their wife, their spouse. And I have seen, parentification, being taken to a whole different level where the child is ready to abandon his or her spouse and family solely to take care of the parent, the parentified, victim. I mean, the survivor is ready to, leave the child. I mean, not give, pay for the child's study, not pay for the wife's living and food and lodging. And, they are just ready to, leave them. I mean, the family that they made and they created, for 10 years, they are ready to abandon, at, just one command of their narcissistic parent. So I
mm.
would want to know, Dr. Z, from your personal experience, what role guilt has to play when it comes to parentification. If you could, share your insight.
Yeah, I mean, guilt is a huge part of it. Especially guilt is such a big part of the trauma bond. It's a very transactional relationship with narcissists, whether it's your parents, your friends, they think, well, I did X, Y, and Z for you, so now you're obligated to do X, Y, and Z for me as well. And when it comes to guilt, they prey on the things they've done for you because they look at that as a transaction. They're like, well, in a way, I paid you to do this, so therefore you're obligated to do this for me. And that
Mhm.
guilt is kind of that thing they weaponize based on the transactions they've done for you. Because if it really came down to pure unconditional love, they wouldn't view it that way. They wouldn't guilt you for doing what's best for you.
So true. I mean, I would like to add something over here. I mean, my dad was a grandiose narcissist, and of course, both of them were abusive in their own unique ways. My dad used to keep the receipts of the things that he used to spend on me, like the milk,
Mm,
everything. I mean, from study to bus tickets to train tickets to the price of a pencil box, the receipt of a medicine. And I mean, I was like, what is this file doing under your bed, under his mattress? And one fine day, he was angry, he was raging, and he took out the file and he showed me that, see, this is what I have spent on you. And I was like, just confused. I mean, what the hell is happening? And, for a moment, I decided that let me calculate everything, whatever he has spent on me, and let me work hard and pay everything back
mm,
to him. That was in my mind. And then I dropped my studies for some time. I somehow started working, earning. But with time I realized that I never told him that bring me in this world. I never told him to put me in so and so school. I never told him to feed me this and this and this. You could have
mm,
just given me anything, and I would have survived or died. I mean, hardly matters. Because I mean, a parent keeping a track record of everything they have spent on you, and then making you feel guilty and obligated, and then subtly telling you, not directly but indirectly telling you, that their daughter, their child is doing this. And I don't know, I mean, God knows what's up with me. I really don't know what plan God has. I mean, my money is wasted. And whenever he used to utter those words, I used to
mm,
feel miserable on the inside. It was literally like, a wound being reopened. It's healed and then someone is reopening it. And I used to wonder, I mean, there were phases, when I used to wonder and think, I mean, if there is a God, please just get rid of me. I don't want to be here. I mean, I
mm.
didn't sign up for this, and then you're billing me for this, and you're keeping me reminded. I mean, it took a long time for me to process that. And as you rightly said, it's purely transactional. It was like, babes, I did this for you. Now I want this.
Mhm.
It's like with interest. And I think that really vilifies parenting. I'm really sorry to say, but that really tarnishes, parenthood and parenting. Because I don't think healthy parenting is like that. I wouldn't ever do that to my child. Sweetie, I got your chocolate. See, this is so much so money. Now you have to give me with interest. So, what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Z? Are they aware, according to you, are they aware what they are putting you through, or it's all about them?
I do think they're aware of it, and it is all about them. At the end of the day, it's all about preserving their fragile ego and doing what they need to do it. So it's unfortunate because yeah, that sort of parenting, it's not normal, it's not healthy. But as both of us are survivors of narcissistic parents. This is what we learned growing up, and we're constantly, at least I'll speak on my end, you're constantly trying to earn the love of other people because that's what you were shown early on in your life. And that wound is such a deep wound to heal because energetically we continue to attract those sorts of relationships unless we tackle
So
that and
true.
look within and say, hey, you know what? I am enough. I am worthy. I don't need to do X, Y, or Z to earn love. Love is unconditional.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's unfortunate that, you know, parents who are narcissistic are like that, but on the other side of that, having gone through it, I'm happy to hear like, you're obviously healed and you would never do that to your children. So, that's something that future generations, and I think honestly, just worldwide, there's increased narcissistic abuse awareness more than there ever has been. People can learn from this, heal from it, and not keep repeating these same toxic cycles.
Absolutely. Now, I would want to know your views on a very tabooed, aspect of narcissistic abuse, and that is emotional incest. I mean, emotional incest, according to me, is, by far one of the most covert and psychologically, disorienting forms of abuse. I mean, it's not something which is, I mean, it's really complex. I mean, it breaks you at different level, and it chains you. I mean, those invisible chains, that you are chained to. Only a few are able to free themselves. Only a few are able to break those chains. I mean, what are your thoughts, Dr. Z? On emotional incest that exists in narcissistic families.
So, I mean, it's something that I'll tell you, like, with my mother and my son, not my son, my brother, rather, her son. He's the golden child. He's like the extension of my parents. So there is that emotional incest of, even though he's married now, she still needs to be the central figure in his life. And it's interesting to see how that's played out in their relationship. But, my brother, interestingly enough, puts boundaries up where he says, no, I'm going to respect my wife and I'm going to do, what is in the best interest of our relationship. So my mom has been forced to take a back seat, which I've seen that kind of devolve in her personality. In terms of, father and daughter, emotional incest, I can't personally elaborate on that, just because I've never felt close to my father just because of the abuse that's happened, from a psychological level. And I definitely don't have the relationship with my dad that my brother has with my mom. So I can only comment on what I've seen with that.
I mean, with what you said, Dr. Z, I'm really curious to know. I mean, I have seen, if the child begins to, use boundary or says no or refuses, definitely it causes the narcissistic parent narcissistic injury. It hurts them. I mean, I didn't bring you in this world to say no to me and prioritize something else that makes you happy rather than prioritizing my happiness. I mean, does he still have that golden child label, or does he get scapegoated as well? I would want to know that.
He still has the golden child label. He can do no wrong, no matter what. Wow. He could literally turn his back on my parents, which he has done on several occasions, and yet they give him kind of like the excuse, the green light, like, well, he's dealing with so much stress. He's got this going on. Whereas
so much on his plate.
Right. And there's that whole Indian sun complex too that goes along with this. But it's really interesting because I felt angry on their behalf with some of the things that have happened, since he's been married. But for some reason, they make lots of excuses for him.
And even though, at the core, they feel betrayed that he's prioritizing himself. Wow, this is really unique. I mean, they still put an effort, to keep up that, facade that he's the one who prioritizes us, and that's it. Perfect family. Great. So, Dr. Z, I mean, according to you, how does emotional enmeshment and covert incest by narcissistic parents, stifle, the growth of the child, in terms of autonomy and individuation? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that sense of autonomy is lost at an early age because you're constantly seeking the validation, the approval, the opinions of your parents. And not only that, it extends into your adult life with your relationships, with your friendships, even with your work relationships. And that sense of autonomy is given away at such a young age. And it's so unfortunate because you've learned to become dependent on the opinions of everyone else except yourself. And it's such a horrible thing that I finally came to realize that only after these 2 covert narcissistic friendships I went through that, wow, I gave away a lot of my power and I was taught to do so at such a young age. And it's unfortunate,
Mm-hmm.
and the two go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So true. So, Dr. Z, at what age, or when was it then you felt the need to individuate, or were you successfully able to individuate? What was it like?
I was forced to do it because of medical school. So,
Oh.
I ended up getting to medical school in New York. And so, because of
Mm-hmm.
that, I was forced to move away from home. And honestly, that's where a lot of my growth happened, is when I moved out of state. Thankfully, because I wanted to become a doctor at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Had it not been for that, I would have been under a much thicker layer of enmeshment than I was, and was until this recent, like, past year, I would say. Um, so that individuating process, I hate to say it, but I sadly am going through it finally more formally in my 40s now,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Ah.
recognize what I've dealt with.
So you think that now is the time where you are actually individuating? I mean, the process is kicking in finally.
Yep, because
I
for
personally feel the same thing, even like I'm entering my 40s and, I have helped others. And, there were, a lot of links that, I had to get rid of. There were a lot of blockages inside of me. And I personally felt like a shapeshifter because of all that, guilt and abuse. And, I was so enmeshed. I wanted to be the rescuer and the savior and to, do all sorts of things to make them happy. And to please them, I was just, like a loyal dog to them. I mean, no matter what they did with me, I had to go back for some kind of validation, and I was good in making up a story, to soothe myself. Mama loves me. She hit me because, somebody else had, provoked her and pissed her off. So that's the reason she did vent it on me. So I had stories ready to survive that family. Only now I'm entering my 40s, and now I feel, I'm now able to, disconnect. I'm now able to individuate. No, that is not me. I cannot be that and, move ahead and help other individuals. I was literally like a shapeshifter. I was a therapist. I was a cook. I was a hospice. I was what not at home. And now I
Mhm.
feel, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be everything. I can just be one person at a time. If I am, married to someone, I'll just play the role of a wife. Thank you. I won't be the mother. Sorry, I won't
Mhm.
be the absent mother that you had. I can't do that because then I'm betraying my own self and I'm not able to live my life fully.
Right.
And one more thing I have noticed, Dr. Z, parentification, in a way, I have felt personally as well as working with others that it really, breaks you at a level where you are unable to be a good parent if you are a victim of parentification. You're so saturated, you're so burnt out, you're so exhausted. You are like, I just don't want to get into it. I mean, a lot of people that I work with who are victims of parentification, emotional incest, they tell me that they don't want kids. They're
Mhm.
done. They have, worked as a parent for their, siblings and for their parent. Now they are so done that, the idea of becoming a parent is, scary for them. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, have you noticed such a thing?
Yeah. So, I can see that, and I completely understand that. And the decision not to have kids for some people, if that was a conscious choice, it makes sense. I can't attest to that because I never was married. I never had children outside of cats. um,
Wow.
but I was in a way spared, and I think that was God protecting me because I was being kind of shaped for a different purpose in my life. But, I do know, had I had gotten married, had I had children, I wouldn't have had the reserve to be a good parent, because I would have still been trying to please my own parents, still trying to cater to
Wow.
their
Mm-hmm.
needs, and I probably would have
Mm-hmm.
prioritized my parents over my own children.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what I
You would
know
have been an
now,
absent parent. Mm-hmm.
yeah, knowing what I know now, though, of course I wouldn't do that, but I don't have children at this point. But
But
I kind of
Zoe is
actually
there.
feel, yeah, I feel lucky that I didn't I wasn't in a position where I would have had children.
I personally feel the same. I mean, my childhood was literally robbed of me. I mean, I was never allowed to draw, paint, dance, sing. Everything had, some evil backstory. If you're painting, I mean, a lot of, spiritual and religious abuse was also there because they take help of everything, whatever they can get hold of, to control you and to keep you away from, walking that path, to connect to your own self, to connect to your higher self. So I mean, I was big time into creating art and craft and was into, a lot of activities as a child. But they were like, no, no, this is not allowed. This is bad. You're going to burn in hell. Don't do this. I mean, just because God couldn't come on earth, they made us. And I mean, I don't know what is, with this fantasy of every narcissistic parent to play God or to be conferred with the title, but just having, I'm sorry for my language, but I mean, but just having sex and having a child and doing the bare minimum, you want to be conferred with the title of being a God and you want the child to worship you. I mean, how do you see that? I mean, that's a common thing that I get to see in India and, with a lot of survivors that I work with. I mean, parents are at a different level altogether, their consciousness is at a different level altogether. I mean, it is so weird that the child is, suffering, because of them. I mean, them controlling the life of the children. The child is suffering. And somewhere or the other, I see that these parents, narcissistic parents of any type and variety, they tend to, get pleasure when they see their kids suffering. I mean, I feel that, they're very sadistic on the inside. They will put the balm. I have seen them with my own experience and others as well. They're gonna, hurt you. Then they're gonna put the balm. They're gonna patch you up. They're gonna tell you, no, you're fine. See, I love you so much. I made you stand and walk again. And then again, they're gonna, damage you. Then again, they're gonna torture you, torment you, and dehumanize you. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Z?
Yeah, it's so true, and it is so sad. I've seen that with both of my parents, where they've gone out of their way to hurt me, knowingly hurt me, see me cry, be upset about
Oh
it,
God, I'm so sorry.
and kind of justify it. Well, that's the truth, or they'll say that, well, maybe you shouldn't have done this, and then I wouldn't have done that. They would blame me for their
Oh
negative
God.
behavior. And unfortunately, I attracted this in my covert narcissistic friendships as well, by no surprise. And it's so sad because your parents are supposed to be people you look up to, who love you no matter what. They shouldn't be the ones who are going out of their way to hurt you for some sort of sick pleasure. It gives them supply. Like for narcissistic parents to hurt their kids like that intentionally, it gives them supply because their fragile ego seeks that so deeply. And it just reveals so much about how flawed, narcissistic people are, especially narcissistic parents.
Mm-hmm. I personally feel, Dr. Z, I would, later want to know your views on that. I mean, I don't think hurt people hurt people. I was also hurt. I was also abused, and I'm never going to do that. I will distance myself. I'll exit. I'm never going to do, what I had been put through. Consciously, unconsciously, no, I will never, recreate that or put anyone through that. All those, gaslighting, making someone doubt their own perception and reality, make someone feel obligated and guilty. I mean, what are your thoughts, Dr. Z? I mean, when you are raised by narcissistic parents, I have seen some of the individuals replicate the same thing with their children. And I have seen those lot who say, no, no, I'm not going to do that. My child is going to be, raised, with gentle parenting. I'm not going to be abusive. I'm not going to manipulate. And, they do get criticized also in society. Oh, what nonsense are you doing with your child? Gentle parenting doesn't work. The bell treatment works. I mean, it's quite common in India and in Asian countries. I mean, the more abusive and vile and toxic the parent is, the outcome is good. The child is good. They respect the parent more. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Z?
Yeah, no, it's something that shouldn't be happening. And you can make one of two choices. You can make the choice of, okay, I got hurt, and I'll make sure that never happens to someone else again. And then the person who chooses to hurt more to make themselves feel better, honestly, I think they're picking up the same narcissistic personality traits that they picked up from their parents or whoever they learned that behavior from. So I don't believe in like being more aggressive, more strict is the answer. It's showing compassion, showing love, so that way the cycle doesn't keep repeating itself.
Mhm. Dr. Z, I have seen, when dealing with covert narcissists, boundaries, often feel like, navigating, mines, live
Mhm.
mines out there. You never know what you step on and what pisses them, and then they're gonna come raging at you. Um, I would want to know, Dr. Z, what therapeutic scaffolding, I mean, would you use or would you suggest others to use to empower survivors to assert boundaries in some ways without triggering or re-traumatizing themselves in the process?
They have to look at it from the sense of what is best for me in this situation. They can't prioritize the opinion, the values of whoever they're trying to protect or seemingly try to protect. Because with the covert narcissist, as you mentioned, there's no way to please them. There's no way to make them happy. You could literally win the Nobel Peace Prize and they still wouldn't be happy. So this is the analogy I used to use with my life with my dad because
Mm,
he was impossible to please. But
mm-hmm,
as survivors are navigating this, they need to look at, okay, what do I need to do that's best for myself, and what action is going to make me behave in a manner that's true to who I am walking into now, and not from a people pleasing standpoint. So you really have to let go of the opinion of, well, I'm worried I'm going to hurt my dad or my mom if I say this. It's no, like, are you self sacrificing yourself in this situation? And if you are, it's not worth it.
mm-hmm. True. Dr. Z, children who are raised by narcissistic parents, for them, I have seen, and with my own experience, caretaking, becomes a kind of a default survival, for children like me. I don't know. I mean, I take care of things which I shouldn't. I take care of people which I shouldn't, exhaust my energy or resources, for. And I don't know, that was my default self for some time. I felt that I need to be the bigger person. I need to be
Hmm.
more kind. I need to be more generous. So what if I have to take a loan? So what if I have to go under debt? So what if I have to do this? But I need to be the bigger person. I need to take care of others. And that's how, I will get, the love, the attention. I mean, the fragmented and all those crumbs. I'm going to get that. Otherwise, I'm not a good person. My worth was tied in how productive and how good I was for the others, and how usable I was for the others. I would want to know, Dr. Z, from your experience, your personal experience, and now that you are guiding a lot of people on TikTok and on social media and creating awareness about, covert narcissism, I would want to know, how can we help such individuals, I mean, like you and me, where we were earlier, how can we help them, come out of that caretaker mode and, in a way reclaim, emotional autonomy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So that caretaker role also stems from people pleasing, which is what you were taught to do at a young age. So chances are, I'll speak for myself, but I suspect this is your case as well. You were the scapegoat
Mm-hmm.
child, the one who
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do right, the one who was constantly trying to, prove to your parents, hey, I'm as worthy of love as my sibling or, whoever else in the family you were constantly being
Mm-hmm.
compared to.
Mm-hmm.
And your narcissistic parents bank on that so that they can exploit that to make sure you'll do whatever it takes to make them happy. And that includes caregiving. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to caregiving, this is something I'm going through right now as we speak. When it comes to my
Mm-hmm.
father, it's like, well, we expect you to completely put your life on hold and do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm comfortable and I'm happy. And really, that's an unreasonable expectation to put on anyone, let alone your child. And so
Mm-hmm.
here's what I've been looking at it as. You have two kids. you have one who's the golden child, who's the perfect kid. So, and then you have one who's a scapegoat who could never do any right. And I'm starting to look at it from, well, you're not going to put all this responsibility on me. One, because you have two children, and two, if there are significant responsibilities that need to be done, there are caregivers out there who do this for a living. That
Absolutely.
responsibility, just because I'm your daughter, just because I'm your blood, is not something that obligates me to take care of you. And
Mhm.
for me, like getting rid of that deep people pleasing need, which was instilled at me at such a young age,
Mm.
was key to helping me navigate through this.
I mean, you also had a sibling. I also had a sibling. And I have seen that these labels, the golden child, the scapegoat, the invisible child, the black sheep, it keeps changing. I don't know if you have observed or not. I was conferred with the title of the golden child in the family. But when I started asking questions, I started fighting, resisting, saying no. It caused them a lot of injury, and that was something which was unacceptable. And then they took away that title. I was no more
Hmm.
the golden child, and then I was scapegoated every now and then. And then what I saw, I have got sisters, and I saw that one of them was then conferred with that title. One was then made the next golden child. And it was really fascinating that there was entire change of this role in the family. I mean, the invisible then became the second golden child. If this golden child also doesn't prove her worth, then I'm going to appoint you as the next golden child. So it was almost like a job vacancy that was vacant. And
Yeah.
there was space and place, and they used to put up that news that now who wants to prove that they are the best, and who wants to win our love. It was almost like a competition, and we all were like struggling that I'm gonna win mama's love and daddy's love. I mean, only to realize that all of it was crumb and manipulation and abuse. Now, growing up in such an environment, I have seen that siblings don't have good relationship. Maybe on the outside it might be, wow, she's my sister, I love her, we are blood. But on the inside, there is no chemistry, and maybe it's because of this competition that is there in the family. I need to win daddy's love, I need to win mama's love. Now I want to know, what are your thoughts? How is sibling relationship used, or you can say abused or weaponized in covert narcissistic families by covert narcissistic parents? What are your thoughts, Dr. Z?
Yeah. So the siblings are pitted against each other from a very young age. And like you said, it's impossible to have a good relationship with your sibling because at a young age, you look at them as your rival. The source of comparison, the source of constant projection, triangulation. And I can tell you, I never had a good relationship with my brother. And for a long time, I thought maybe it was my fault because that's the way it was projected onto me. Like that
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a good sister or I should be more caring or whatever, to my brother at a young age. But in fact, it was that they split us up into these two roles. In my case, they didn't really change the two roles. And maybe it's because there's only two of us. If there were four kids, maybe five, it would have been different. But, it came down to a point which, I'll say like 2 years ago, it's actually been 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I finally walked away from my brother and I walked
Mm-hmm.
away from that relationship, which honestly, it completely dismantled the whole family unit. So my
Mm-hmm.
family hasn't been the same since then, and they still blame me, of course, for how what has happened. But I don't look back and say, "Wow, I really miss my brother," because we never really had a relationship to begin with.
Absolutely. And also, one more thing I would like to add over here. When you have, one or both, parent as, covert narcissists, they pit you in very unique ways, and then they play victim, when you confront them. I have seen it, the problem was always with some other sibling, somebody else, but them. And when I used to try and bridge gaps, when I used to try and fix the relationship, or maybe take a step ahead and, extend, a kind of, support, or, a kind of a welcome, to the sibling. They had a lot of things to say. They used to tell me that, no, it was you who said this, and that is what mama told me. And
Mm,
I mean, to me, the mother used to say that, no, it's not you, the problem is with them. So it was almost like, a kind of passing the parcel triangulation. It was like, some kind of a joke. I mean, nobody was there to take responsibility. Everybody had a different version, everybody had a
mm.
different story, and everybody was not happy with anyone at all. I would want to know, Dr. Z, this really damages you at various levels, because family is a unit and everybody has to work and play together, do their bit, and that's it. But when you grow up in such a dysfunctionality, it does in some ways make you a magnet as well. I was a magnet as well. I used to attract a lot of toxic and, crappy relationship. And I used to feel that it's my role to fix it and make it work. It was my role to give more and make things happen. I cannot be the bad one. I was really scared of that label. I was like,
Mhm.
terrified if someone would say, Sarah, you are, so bad, you are so evil, you are so mean. I would want to know, Dr. Z, according to you, how does that, sibling relationship? I mean, one thing is that, you have a very, messy and, dysfunctional relationship with the narcissistic parent. How does the relationship with the sibling impact, survivor's adult life? Does that also have a role to play, or is just the parental thing?
It's both. Yeah, I'll tell you and I've seen this at least with my brother. The golden child ends up picking up narcissistic personality traits as well that they've learned from the parents. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like even with him, I was constantly trying to prove my worth or who
Mm-hmm.
I was to him. There was this notion or sentiment that was imposed from my father as well as my brother that I'm not a good person or I'm not smart or I'm not worthy of X, Y, or Z. And that wound that I shared with my father, I shared the same wound with my brother because he literally was a mirror of my father in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, how that affected me going into my adult years is that not only was I trying to look for that, heal that wound or look for that validation in my friendships or my relationships, it was something that I was also trying to heal even through my brother, but I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately, it wasn't until I chose myself and I walked away did I finally start feeling more whole again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dr. Z, I personally feel covert narcissistic abuse is one of the worst forms. I mean, other forms
Hmm.
of abuse, at least there is scar, but with covert narcissistic abuse, there is no scar. It's all emotional, psychological, and then it begins to change you at various levels. It transforms you. You don't remain yourself. You become some other form and version. I would want to know, with your personal experience, and I mean with your medical experience and exposure, I would want to know, how can we, reclaim ourselves, the lost self? I mean, we were something, and then all of this started happening. We lost ourselves. We started shape shifting, people pleasing, adjusting, compromising, sacrificing, becoming the sacrificial lamb, and doing every sorts of things to survive. And that became a reality. How can we, help others, get that thing out of their system and reclaim their authentic self? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How can we do that? Where do we start?
Yeah. So you really need it, and I really am a firm believer of this. No matter what the circumstances, you need to get away from the covert narcissist as quickly as possible. Whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, it's a husband, a wife, whoever. This is something that you need to find a way to exit that relationship because you cannot really heal in the environment that caused you pain. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is once you do get away, then you're stuck with all these cycles of rumination. You're stuck with all the pain. I actually think covert narcissistic abuse does show physical ailments, and I can personally attest to this, as a physician and a survivor, I developed autoimmune Graves' disease because of the abuse that I dealt with for 40 years. It even extends beyond my covert narcissistic
Oh God.
friendships. So
Hmm.
if you don't listen to the red flags, if you keep ignoring it, and you keep self-sacrificing yourself, your body will tell you, hey, something is wrong. And, this autoimmune thyroid disease that I got, especially Graves' disease, it's associated with anxiety, palpitations, weight loss, like you feel like you're on edge all the time. Like that compounded with the abuse you're getting from the covert narcissist, it makes everything even like 10 times worse. So, I always look back and I'm thankful to my thyroid because it forced me to cut out relationships that I wasn't otherwise willing to do. And, I think it depends on how long you've been in the relationship, of course, but some of those invisible traumas do become physically visible over time. So once you do leave, once you do have the silence, then you need to start investigating the why of how did this happen to me? What's the root cause of it? And as the premise of this entire podcast is, most likely it started with your parents or some sort of parental figure in your life. And then you need to look at those old wounds and figure out, okay, like what were the wounds that I was trying to heal in these adult relationships that I had? And it's really that deep inner work that you need to do. And it's painful. It's not easy. You have to sit with it. You got to move through it. And then finally you can go through it and come out on the other side knowing, okay, I don't need to get validation to be worthy of this. I don't need to rely on someone's opinion to know that my opinion is valid. And that self love, that self confidence, of course, won't come overnight. It's something you have to work on. And you continue to be a work in progress, honestly, for years after you leave the covert narcissist or any narcissistic relationship. But the pain is really not only just having been in the relationship, leaving it, but it's also the work you have to do to deal with the trauma and the triggers that you were given at a young age, even though you didn't ask for it. And I think that's really what's key to move forward.
Hmm. Hmm. Dr. Z, you said, to exclude yourself, to, isolate yourself. I mean, to, stay away from the covert narcissist. That's what you said. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we call it no contact. And
Mm-hmm.
again, no contact is something which is a taboo in today's time. I mean, not everyone is ready. I mean, some are, scared of being judged, labeled as the ungrateful child. Oh, you were no contact, you forgot your parent, they sacrificed so much. So, just those one sided stories
Mm-hmm.
and narratives. And people are there to judge you and label you. A lot of individuals are scared. They're not scared because they're losing a parent. They are scared of being bullied after going no contact with the covert narcissistic parent. I mean, what advice and suggestion you have for those folks? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
who are not at all in a position to go no contact. I mean, for whatever XYZ reason, I personally feel you should get rid of all the reasons and go no contact. But I mean, people have their own reasons. Maybe inheritance, they are not financially capable, or they are so enmeshed, and it's a big family and everyone is the covert narcissist, flying monkey and enabler, so everyone is going to come at you if you cut those cords. What are your thoughts, and what is your suggestion for them? I personally feel there is no other way apart from going no contact. What are your thoughts, Dr. Z, if someone is in a difficult position and
Mm-hmm.
they are unable to go no contact?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I honestly think you really can't generally heal unless you're fully disconnected, not only with the source of the initial narcissistic relationship, but also their flying monkeys. You have to go non-contact with them, and with family, like family's not going to understand whether it's your cousins, your uncles, your aunts. They don't know what you've been through, and unless they've been in your shoes, they have no right to judge what you've been through. So for me, like I'll tell you, like that need to appease everyone, to maintain a certain image, and I understand fully being South Asian as well. Like I really don't care what my extended family thinks of me. I don't care what my parents think of me anymore. I just care about what I think of myself. And at the end of the day, that gives me solace because I'm finally showing up for myself in a way that I never did. And that breaks all the societal norms, that breaks all the cultural norms. But frankly speaking, there needs to be an exit strategy if you really want to regain your full peace. Gray rocking is exhausting. Gray rocking flying monkeys, gray rocking extended family members just to keep the peace. It's exhausting and it takes its toll. So, if someone really feels like, wow, I'm going to lose all my family, they also need to take a step back and say, does this family really have my back? If they don't have your back, how important is it just because they're family for you to stay in their life or for them to stay in your life, conversely? So that's the way I
Mm-hmm.
look at it. I know it's not
Mm-hmm.
a one size fits all, but I never thought, if you asked me 2 years ago, would I ever walk away from my brother? I would be like, no, he's my brother. I would never walk away from them. But I have not looked back with any regret.
Mm-hmm. True. One more thing, Dr. Z, I have observed, if you have a covert narcissistic parent, they don't like, the lively parts of you. I mean, you
Hmm.
enjoying, you blooming and blossoming and being yourself, being a kiddo, being a girl. I don't know. I mean, something, you know, in them really, irritates and unnerves them when they see you genuinely happy, expanding, growing, or enjoying, something. And that doesn't include them. I mean, they cannot be included everywhere. I mean, we have a life of our own. So, I mean, I personally feel in order to have a relationship with a covert narcissistic parent, I mean, with my own experience and working with other survivors, you literally have to kill parts of you. You can't have those parts alive and keep the relationship going. It won't be a stable relationship. You have to kill the child in you. You have to kill the artist in you. You have to kill the happy person, the jovial person in you, and only then you will be given some crumbs. So it's like this dead mother, and she wants a dead child. She doesn't
Hmm.
want a live child. I mean, if you are normal and healthy, a healthy mother wants you to be healthy. She wants you to grow, evolve, experience freedom, and just go out there and do everything. And, we are there. Don't worry. We are there at the back of you. You can always come back. That's how things are in
Hmm.
healthy families. That's for me. I mean, whatever I have experienced so far. But in narcissistic family, you literally have to actively, you have to kill your hobbies, likes, desire, wants, dreams. And you have to, do this so that you're accepted by them, you are loved by them, some form of crumbs. Of course, that is not genuine love. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, can you be whole, when you are raised by a covert narcissistic parent, or you have to let go of a lot of parts of you? And plus, I mean, there is another question to this. um, can we summon those lost parts once we start individuating? If you could tell me with your own experience, Dr.
Yeah,
Z.
for sure. It's such a great point and a great question. I was actually thinking about that this morning before I joined this podcast about how, with my father in particular, he never liked seeing me happy. He didn't like
Oh
it
God.
when he didn't even congratulate me when I graduated medical school.
Oh, I'm
That's
so sorry.
how much he withheld a lot of praise and affection. And when I would go on vacations, he would be unhappy when I'd come back all rested and jovial. And it's such an odd thing, but it's that concept of, well, I feel dead on the inside, so my kids should feel this way too. It so applies. And in order to appease a covert narcissistic parent, which you can honestly never do, you do end up letting go of various parts of your personality, your joy, your happiness, things that really make you fulfilled. And,
Mm-hmm.
once you walk away from the idea of, well, I don't want to please my covert narcissistic parent. In fact, I don't even care what this parent thinks about anymore. And you want to regain your autonomy, you want to regain those parts, you certainly can. And actually, what is interesting for me, being on the other side of this, is that I find myself doing even more interesting hobbies than I did
Wow.
before. And so not
Mm-hmm.
only do you rediscover some of those parts of you that maybe you abandoned, you bring them back and maybe even transition to something even more creative or some other interest, whatever it is. And that's part of I would say, the fun part of the healing journey is discovering, the old parts as well as the new parts that you didn't even know existed.
Mm-hmm. So true. And before we conclude, today's discussion, because it is hitting, an hour, I have got an interesting question, so I won't let you go, Dr. Ziante, unless you don't answer that. I would want to know your view. Dr. Z, what are your thoughts on financial abuse by covert narcissists? I mean, does it exist, or they are just, victims and person who's suffering and, who are dysregulated, and that's it? I mean, if you could tell us how, according to you, covert narcissistic individuals exploit as well as financially abuse their offspring.
Yeah, it's a great point. So they definitely financially abuse, weaponize anything they can do to hold guilt and obligation towards that relationship. So covert narcissists in particular, they love to do weaponized gift giving, weaponized charity. Basically, wherever there's an audience that can see them doing good and see, oh wow, he's such a good parent, or she's such a good parent, or wow, she's so generous and humble, they're going to exploit that no matter what. And their kids are no exception. So with children in particular, it's even more manipulative and deceitful, because not only are they getting the praise from everyone else in the family for what they're doing, but they're also trying to create this sense of obligation in the child, which shouldn't be made from a financial standpoint or anything really. And covert narcissists are masters of guilt tripping and creating that sense of obligation. And money is one way they love to do it.
Mm-hmm. I would like to add, something to this. Dr. Z, I have seen, you rightly said that, if there is an audience, oh, they love it, then they're gonna, pour extra on you, so that, it's being registered and recorded by the audience. So they can summon the audience. Didn't you see? I did so much. I did it in front of you. Don't you guys remember? And look how she's treating me, how she's behaving, how he is behaving. Definitely, they get a chance to weaponize that. And apart from that, Dr. Z, I have seen that they make you feel, these covert narcissistic parents, they make you feel, as if the bare minimum that they did was a great thing, was the biggest sacrifice. And I think that is, how they guilt trip you. That is how they, make you feel guilty and obligated, by making you feel, gaslighting you into believing that the bare minimum was the biggest sacrifice they did. And now you need to honor that sacrifice by sacrificing your authentic self.
Right. And that's the thing, breadcrumbs, right? They love to breadcrumb.
Absolutely.
Expect you to stick to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And before we conclude today's discussion, I mean, it was too good. I mean, Dr. Z, I really want to have more discussions, and often, I want to engage in conversations with you, because it's so good. And, I feel I'm not alone. I mean, of course, my YouTube family is there, but, talking to a survivor, a medical expert, and now who's, taken on this mission to educate others about covert narcissistic abuse, it's so amazing. It's so cathartic. I feel so validated. I feel so great. So before we end today's discussion, Dr. Z, I mean, what would you like to tell, to all those survivors out there who are still battling and somehow dragging and trying to survive and,
Yeah, so definitely want, your audience and all survivors to know that you're not alone. What you went through was real. You're not imagining things. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to be willing to take the risk, willing to let go a lot of old relationships and old things that no longer serve you, so that you can step into your higher purpose and your higher calling, and maybe do the work that we're doing here today, educating others, empowering other survivors. So that's the party message I want to leave.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Z. And guys, I would like to request you, to go and check out Dr. Z's profile. It's amazing. Lots of, expert things you're going to hear. She talks about covert narcissism. Her ID is the same as, that you can see under her name, the Flying Monkey MD on TikTok. And she's doing wonderful. So go and please follow her and get yourself educated. Dr. Z, thank you so much for joining today.
And thank you for having me.